Well, this morning I will ask you to consider, first of all, what is the greatest possible thing God could ever pursue for you. Okay, that is going to be my request that you consider that. That's going to be answered in the course of the morning here as we look at Jacob's life, because as we have seen with Jacob, he has had some ideas about what it looks like to have God's blessing, to have the blessing of his father, and he's accumulated a lot of stuff. Right, he's accumulated a lot of things. He went to Uncle Laban's world, got a lot of stuff. Last week we saw how God protected him from Laban's machinations, and he was still able to accumulate a lot of goats and sheep and all those different types of things. He got a couple of wives, got a bunch of kids. And so it would be easy for anybody to look at Jacob's circumstance and think, okay, this guy's accumulated a lot. He has a lot. This is exactly what we should be pursuing in life. Even if you're not looking for a couple of wives and a lot of goats, there's still a sense of prosperity, right, and abundance, and that you've accumulated a lot. And this morning, as we look at the, I guess, perhaps infamous episode of Jacob wrestling with God, you are going to see that God's pursuit of Jacob is that Jacob would see his greatest possible good. The greatest possible good that Jacob could have is for him to have God, right? This is the greatest possible good. And the way we get there sometimes is a little bit different than we might expect. And as we'll see, the Lord dealing with Jacob here, even dealing with him physically, we will see perhaps something that resonates with you this morning as you consider your own Christian experience, right? If you have trusted in Christ and you've walked with the Lord Jesus, you have found over the years that things may occur that are unexpected. And in those unexpected moments, it is easy to think, all right, God, I thought you were for me, right? And just as Jacob is dealing with God throughout these chapters we've been looking at, he's saying, God, I thought you had promised to bless me, promised to take care of me. Where are you right now? And these are questions that we all often will ask. And I want you to walk away this morning. This is a very personal thing for me. This is something I've written on academically. I've written on in such a way that I think is important for anybody to absorb. It is to say that suffering, well, it is unpleasant. Suffering, well, it is uncomfortable. Suffering, well, it is genuine, right? Suffering hurts. That suffering is not something that God has over here in a world that is apart from his design for his people. That there is something good in God's use of suffering, something good in God's use of, as we see in this episode, touching of the hip, so that Jacob goes through the rest of his life with a limp. There's something good in this that the Lord will remind us that we, right, are not ends in ourselves, that the pursuit of pride and accumulation of goods, this is not our ultimate good. So, Christian, I want you to walk away this morning knowing that God uses your suffering for your good. That's a little preface just before we get into everything here. Genesis 32, verses 22 through 32, I will read for you now, and we'll look at the broader chapter as a whole to get our context. But this is where we find the episode of Jacob wrestling with God and the changing of Jacob's name to Israel. The same night, he arose. So Jacob got up. He is fleeing from Laban. Now he's going to be fleeing from his brother. Same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had, and Jacob was left alone. So this should remind you, right? We've seen this before, where Jacob is alone, right? In the wilderness, in the desert, nothing but a rock to sleep on. And Jacob is alone with God. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Now, I want you to bear in mind, we're going to get to this, but I want you to think in the language that Jacob is speaking, okay? Ancient Hebrew. When he says his name, what does Jacob mean? It means heel grabber, cheat, thief. So you imagine you have, let's say, You're walking the earth 2,000 years ago. Jesus comes up to you, and let's say your name is Thief. Comes up and says, "What's your name?" Like, "I'm a thief." You have Holy Son of God encountering you, and when you're asked what your name is, what is your identity? I'm a thief. I said, Jacob. I said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. For Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. So after this episode, imagine here's Jacob, and he is walking back to his family, he is walking to his company, and he is walking with a limp, and this stays with him throughout his life. Right? Something happens here, and Jacob is marked. And you have to think, like, what must Jacob think every time that he lifts his leg, and every time he puts his leg down, every step he's taking, what is he being reminded of? Perhaps for you this morning, there's something that you feel like you've been marked by when it comes to an issue of suffering. Maybe there's something that's happened to you where you feel like this is a constant reminder of weakness, that I'm not able to do something I want to do. Why, oh why, oh why? And I really sincerely hope this morning, I sincerely hope that in the midst of that kind of discomfort, you're going to walk away, pun intended, the same way that Jacob did from this, which is to be reminded that the Lord has purposes for disabling limps, to remind you of who he is. So here's your big idea. As with Jacob at Peniel, God will, if necessary, work through discomfort and inconvenience in order to secure the heart-level obedience of his people for their fruitfulness and lasting joy. Now there's one little phrase I want you to be mindful of here in this, all right? If you write things down, please underline this if you can. If you don't write things down, just please remember this. What we're dealing with here is God working to garner heart-level obedience. Because if you remember Jacob's story, we have Abraham the pagan, we have Isaac, who's like the nice church kid, the son of Abraham, and then you have Jacob, who grows up with all the benefits, all the blessings of being in a home where God's name is honored, and yet he takes it and he's like, I just want my stuff. I want stuff. I'm going to take it from dad, take it from brother, take my stuff. Now, that's good, right? That's good. That's what I want. And so it is easy for many of us who grow up in environments in which being a nice person or a good person is the thing you do. It's easy to render this kind of obedience that looks good on paper without actually having your heart dealt with. Now, eventually, that's going to show up. Right? It's going to show up in ways where the heart is kind of poking out from behind the curtain, and it's going to be doing things that aren't necessarily good as long as other people don't see them, so on and so forth. But here is what we need to be aware of. God is concerned with heart-level obedience in his people. Heart level. And so this morning, what you should be considering is, how is it that God has been working so that this is changing? Right? It's easy for you to get in a car, to show up and be in a building for a couple of hours on a Sunday morning. It's easy for most people to not go out and murder people. Okay? But it's not easy for you to see selfishness and pride put away, and a love for God as your greatest treasure and greatest good put at the forefront of all of your pursuits. That's not an easy thing to do. And so as God is pursuing heart-level obedience in his people, as he's pursuing it in you, what we're aiming for is not an easy thing for us to do, okay? It is hard, it is impossible for us. But the Lord uses circumstances like disabling events, as he does with Jacob, in order to secure heart-level obedience. That's what the Lord is after in you and in me. So getting worked up and trying to work it out. Let's get the context of what's happening here. All right, so Jacob runs from Laban. He's really freaked out. Uncle's going to come after me. Now we have something happen that's probably even more threatening. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." So he called the name of that place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, in the country of Edom. All right, so he knows that the way he's going back, right, he's coming from Laban's country, he's going back to the land of promise, he's going back to home, and he knows as he passes by that his brother Esau is going to have a spot, a land that he's going to have to go through. And so he's afraid of this. And this is what's happening here. He sent messengers before him to Esau's brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, "Thus you shall say to my lord Esau." Right? So there's already the sense of kind of like greasing the palms. "Thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, and female servants I have sent to tell my Lord in order that I may find favor in your sight." So is he just saying this in order to kind of give a resume? Like, you should be very impressed with me, right? I've accumulated these things, and now you should look at me and say, "What a good job, Jacob." That's not what's happening, right? You have Jacob who is frightened. He's afraid. He's afraid that his brother is going to do something to him, because the last time he saw his brother, what was going on? It was attempted murder. His brother's trying to kill him. So if that's the last time you saw somebody as they were trying to kill you, you'd probably feel a little threatened if you have to deal with them again. Jacob did, and so he is greasing the palms here. He's saying through his servants, "Go ahead. I'm not going to talk to him. You go ahead. All right? Bill, why don't you go talk to my brother? I'm not going to deal with him. And you go tell my brother, I got a lot of stuff." Because what might Esau be interested in? The stuff. So the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau, and he's come to meet you." Right, this sounds encouraging. He's coming to meet you. And there are 400 men with him. Now, this number, 400 men, this is the ancient Near Eastern equivalent of saying he has an army with him. All right, this isn't just like he's got 400 buddies and you're going to have a really great time together. You're going to have a party. You're going to celebrate. It's so great to be reunited. This is there's a very real sense of threat here. Like, he's got 400 people. He's bringing an army with him. So yeah, your brother's going to come and see you, and he's bringing a whole bunch of people, probably armed. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. So what does Jacob do here, right? Jacob has had a history with us of trying to plot and do things to make sure his path is clear. So he divided the people who were with him and the flocks and herds and camels into two camps, thinking if Esau comes to the one camp and attacks it, then the camp that is left will escape. So in his mind, he's thinking, okay, we got half my family. I don't want them all taken out. We got 400 people. That's a lot of people. And they could just take everybody out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of like, here's Rachel, and you and these kids go here. Leah, you and these kids go here. And I don't want to lose either of you, but if I have to lose somebody, it's going to be maybe you. Right? So this is kind of a greasy thing that he's doing here. Right? Imagine just like separating your kids and saying, you're more likely to encounter your crazed, bloodthirsty uncle. Right? That's not a good thing. Like you don't want to have that relationship with your dad where dad has clearly favored somebody else, right? But that's what he's doing here. Now Jacob does something a little unexpected. After he makes these plans, he's trying to, make sure things are going the way that he wants them to. He does something unexpected by praying. Jacob prays, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, I will surely do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude." So this is commendable. And in fact, this is the longest prayer that we're going to find from him throughout all of Genesis. It's this prayer for help. He's asking God, help me, please. I really, really, really need you to fulfill your purposes, fulfill your promise to me to do me good, right? God, you promised me you're going to do me good. And so my brother is angry and he is threatening lives, so please help. So we have a mixture here. You think of what Jacob would have been like before, right? When he ran away from Esau the first time, the guy was just, he was so sleazy, willing to manipulate, willing to do whatever he could in order to control the outcome of a situation at the expense of other people, his own conscience. But now we're seeing a change has occurred with him, right? So he wants to hedge his bets, but he's also going to pray, which in some respects is a hedging of the bets for Jacob here. So he stayed there that night, and from what he had with him, he took a present for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their calves, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. These he handed over to his servants, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, pass on ahead of me, and put a space between drove and drove. He instructed the first one, Esau, my brother, meets you and asks you, to whom do you belong? Where are you going? And whose are these ahead of you? Then you shall say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are presents sent to my lord Esau, and moreover, he is behind us. He likewise instructed the second and the third, and all who followed the droves. You shall say the same thing to Esau when you find him. And you'll say, moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought, I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterward I shall see his face. Perhaps he'll accept me. So the present passed on ahead of him, and he himself stayed that night in the camp. So, and when we're looking at the context of what's happening is Jacob and the Lord are dealing with one another at Peniel. The context that we find Jacob entering this from is the context of a man who has basically said, I don't know that I can trust. I don't know that I can trust God to take care of me. I don't know that I can trust God to do what's best for me. I don't know that I can trust God to do what's right. I might be able to, right? There's a possibility here. So I'm going to pray. I'm going to ask God to do this. But I also need to make sure that, this strategy is probably going to be the one that prevails. Now, maybe you identify with that. I know I do. When I think about ways in which fear settles into my heart, like I'm afraid something's going to happen, my first resort is not to pray about it. And I don't want to treat prayer in this way. I don't want to treat it as though it's something like, well, you should just go pray about it, like a trite go pray about it. I'm talking genuine dependence upon God in prayer, where you go to him and you say, Lord, I know that what you have done in my life is good, and I know what you've promised me is good, even if hard things should happen. And so I'm simply asking you to deal with this because you have ordered my life in such a way that this is where I'm at right now. That's a good kind of praying, right? It's not trite. But I know that my first inclination when I feel frightened, especially when it's areas where threatening things inside that matter most to me occur, my first instinct is to just say, well, I got to figure this out. I have to deal with this somehow. And then I'll pray about it along the way. Now that's kind of like we're sanctifying our efforts there. And whatever wisdom there might be in the plans that we have, I think that Jacob's response here is a lot more, I think, representative of where a lot of us find ourselves when hard things come. So Jacob's mixture of prayer and orchestration is a common experience of God's people in the battle of unbelief. So, Christian, even if you have saving faith, your daily walking with Jesus is not something you're carrying out perfectly. And so I believe it's like over 350 times we are commanded in the Bible, don't fear. Don't be afraid. Just don't do it. God is constantly reassuring us as his people to not be afraid. He will take care of his people, which means that we have to hear this. Right? You have to hear this because all of us are prone to looking at things and saying, I can't trust. I have to. And Jacob is doing that here, right? Jacob is saying, I've got to make sure that things go well. I know God has promised, right? You think of this very personal promise that's given to Jacob where God says, I'm going to be with you. I will bless you and you will take this land and your children will inherit it from you. He has every reason to trust, okay, God will take care of me. And yet, just like we do, he's thinking, yeah, but I have to make sure this is done first, right? I trust that you identify with that. Genesis 16, 1 through 2, just remember for Jacob, like, we all have ways in which we can be reminded of the foolishness of our actions like this. For Jacob, he has grandma. Sarah, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar, and Sarah said to Abram, behold, now the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my servant. Maybe that I shall obtain children by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarah. This is grandma, okay? So imagine family history, and you think about something a really terrible thing that was done by your grandfather, by your grandmother. And you're like, I don't want to repeat that. I don't want to repeat that. I don't want to be like that because I saw what a terrible thing occurred as a result of this. This is where Jacob has an opportunity to look back and say, I need to stop the plotting. I need to stop. I can trust. Grandma should have trusted. Grandma should have trusted. She should have trusted God to fulfill his promises. She didn't, and there was a really catastrophic failure that occurred from that. And yet for somebody as close to him as grandma, and for us, even in our own lives, we will think something really catastrophically awful happened when I refused to trust God in this matter, so I should not do that again. We will still find ourselves in a position often where we will say, you know what, but maybe it's going to be different this time, right? Kind of like gambling, where, okay, I know last time I didn't win anything, but this time it might be better, right? Because if I lost one time, then the odds are higher that I'm going to win the next time. All right, so we just concoct these different things in our heads, like, okay, well, maybe this is going to work, but look at the examples that have gone before you. Look at the examples in your own life, the examples in the lives of other people to say, it is foolish to trust in your own abilities when God has made promises to take care of you, right? Especially if those abilities are being exercised in the direction of disobedience to God. In Jeremiah chapter 10, the prophet prays, says, I know, O Lord, that the way of man is not in himself, that it is not in man who walks to direct his steps. Correct me, O Lord, but in justice, not in your anger, lest you bring me to nothing. I mean, this is a really, really good way for you, Christian, to approach God when it comes to these issues of trust and of confidence, where you feel like you have to manipulate things to get them to be the way you want them to be. Think about this prayer that Jeremiah offers, where he's like, Lord, I know, I acknowledge, I recognize the fact that I cannot do this in such a way that will be really your best for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, God, to correct me. I'm going to ask you to deal with me. I'm going to ask you to deal with my heart, God, because I know that inside of here, there is this disposition that says, I can't trust you. So I really need you to correct me. Just please be gentle. Please be gentle. Because if you deal with me the way that I deserve to be dealt with, I'm just going to get crushed. My unbelief is so insidious, I'll just get crushed. So please be gentle. And you can guess how God will respond to that for you. The loving father to his child. James chapter 4. James says it a little bit more bluntly. He's talking about the way we try to direct our own steps and make sure things go the way that we want them to instead of acknowledging God's purposes. He says, come now, you say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. You do not know what tomorrow will bring. What's your life? For you're a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. So James is speaking here to everybody, but especially to a group of people who is very confident in their own ability to do things for themselves. And we live in a culture today, 21st century West, where if you have any kind of if you are not homeless, basically, You have a certain ability to manipulate your circumstances favorably. Right? There are very few people who are completely unable to do things to make them work better. And so to all of us, James would say, look, however able you may consider yourself to be, however much you may have at your disposal, how many resources you might have, just remember this. You don't know if you're going to be alive tomorrow or not. So instead of counting on yourself to ensure that your way is going to be level, what you should do is you just say, yeah, I have resources, I might be able to make some plans, but what's going to govern all of this is the recognition that I'm not my own. And so if the Lord wills, and if it is pleasing to him, then this will happen. And then if your plans get frustrated, Christian, you can say, it wasn't pleasing to God for this to happen right now, right? Vacation canceled, it's okay. Job lost, it's okay. Because the Lord knows what he's doing. You don't need to hedge your bets. So then we're going to look here how God uses these things, right? How he uses moments in order to direct our attention away from ourselves and our own confidence and abilities. So the God who pins his people. Verses 22 through 25. Again, the same night Jacob arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Now, if you're not familiar with this event, just please understand, we're not going to go into much detail here about how we know what's happening as far as the identity of the figure who's wrestling with Jacob. But just rest assured that this is a divine figure because we have Jacob saying, I have seen God face to face. Right? So the reason he names the place Peniel is because he has seen God. Right? So this is what we call a theophany. It's an appearance of God. This is a pre-incarnate, perhaps, illustration of Christ dealing with Jacob personally. Whatever the case, we've seen this throughout Genesis in different places where you've had the angel of the Lord that'll be spoken of, right? The angel of the Lord comes to such and such a place. He meets with Abraham. He goes to Sodom. And so we have this figure, this divine figure who is with Jacob at this place, and he is wrestling with him. And as he wrestles, Jacob is not giving up, right? This is kind of a strange thing if you think about Jacob as a man, because he wasn't Mr. Burley, wasn't Mr. Manly, wasn't Mr. Guy. Right? Remember, he liked Food Network. He liked cooking. He liked baking. He liked hanging out with mom in the tent. Wasn't out, doing all the other things that his brother Esau did. And yet we have a couple of events in his life where his strength seems to show up. One of them is getting a wife, right? Rolls this stone away from the well because he wants to impress this girl. And then this event, which does say something about the intent of Jacob's heart, where he's like, I'm not going to give up here. Now, we've seen how he has plotted before and how he has manipulated, and how he's used resources in order to accomplish this. And yet there's something different happening here because Jacob is wrestling with this figure. He's wrestling with this individual, and he is saying, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. And it is a commendable thing at this point. Nevertheless, even though he's not giving up, what happens is this figure touches his hip. And if you've ever had a hip injury, it's very unpleasant, right? It's one of those things like hip, knee, ankle, where you just take for granted the fact you have these joints that are operating. And then something happens to it. Like, I can't walk. This isn't normal. This doesn't feel right. And it's a disabling event for him. So what do we make of this? God meets Jacob at Peniel in order to drive him away from confidence in himself and toward a trust in God to do as he has promised. So Jacob is wrestling. He's wrestling. You think, I'm mustering every bit of strength I have at this point. And then at one point, and this is taking all night, right? This is going on for hours. And at one point, God says, Jacob, that's enough. That's enough. The wrestling is going to stop because you're not going to best me. Now, just by way of review for you, You think about your own experience. It is not uncommon for us to approach God with this attitude, like, I'm going to get him to do what I want him to do. I'm going to get him to do this for me. And if he doesn't do it, then he's not good. If he doesn't do it, then there's something wrong with him. And I'm just going to get him to do this. And I want you to recognize here, just in the way that God does this to Jacob, God is not going to be bested by his people. It doesn't mean that you won't prevail in prayer. It does mean that you're not going to manipulate him. He knows what he's doing. And if need be, he will put your hip out of socket. Verse 18 through 20 in chapter 27, he went into his father, said, "My father," and he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." So why did Jacob need to have this happen? Just remember here that there are things going on inside of you. There are things going on inside of me that you may not recognize need to be addressed the way that they do. And so for Jacob, we have this insight into what's going on in his heart. And we go to chapter 27, we think, okay, here is a man who is willing to cheat, to manipulate, to lie, to take God's name in vain, in the most literal sense of the term here. Taking God's name in vain to say, you know what, the Lord has done this, right? There is something so profound that needs to be changed in Jacob, that if the Lord were to not pay attention to it, it would be unloving. Right? Imagine if Jacob were left to be a manipulator, to be a plotter, to be one who just tries to get things his way and uses whatever resources he can to get it. Right? What type of man would that be? And then how good would God be in letting Jacob continue on like that? Right? If God has taken Jacob for himself, would it be in Jacob's best interest to be left to his sin? And the answer is, of course not. He would not be doing him a favor if this occurs. And so as Jacob is wrestling with God in chapter 32, we're finding is that God is dealing with Jacob, and he's ultimately going to be dealing with him in this very specific place, right? We said before, Jacob's name means cheat. And it means cheat because in the context of his birth, he is born and he is doing what? He's grabbing the heel of his brother. This is like, if you want to think about it, a very early wrestling move for Jacob. Where he's like, I'm going to prevail. I'm going to win. I'm going to take from my brother. And in this place, I'm going to take from this one who is wrestling with me. I'm going to do that. And his entire life, he has spent with this idea of, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take. I'm going to manipulate. I'm going to control. I'm going to be the one who ensures that my way is had. And so the Lord, knowing Jacob's heart, meets with him in such a way where he is going to explain in this very personal, physical event, Jacob, you cannot cheat your way into my blessing. If you want my blessing, Jacob, you're not going to get it by doing what your name implies. I will have to deal with you. And I will have to change your name, Jacob, so that you are no longer the cheat. He's dealing with his heart here. Isaiah 41, the prophet says, "But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend." So this is a pastoral word that's spoken through the prophet to the people who had on the verge of exile, the verge of being decimated and sent off into a foreign land. God is speaking to them. And he says, "You whom I took from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest corner, saying to you, you are my servant, I have chosen you and not cast you off. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." So these are promises that God makes to his people. And you think, like, what is the biggest enemy of these promises being realized? And it's unbelief. Not unbelief because you don't have this abstract sense of like, oh, I really feel like I'm believing this today. But unbelief in the active form of it, right? Jacob making these plans to manipulate his brother Esau is unbelief in action. It's Jacob saying, yeah, I can trust God, but really, I know I can do this because I've been able to do this before. I was able to get my father's blessing and my brother's birthright by manipulating before, and I can kind of grease my way out of this. I know I should acknowledge God in it, so I'm going to. We'll pray about it. But when it's all said and done, I'm going to divide up my family, and I'm going to send gifts to my brother. And so the biggest enemy of God's work in your heart, right, of this heart level obedience that he is after, the biggest enemy that you have here, it is this unbelief, it's this unwillingness to trust God to be faithful to his promises. And so when you see a promise like this saying, I'm with you, okay? I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. It's preceded in this context by reminding the people, saying, remember where you came from. I took you. I took you. I took you. I called you. You're mine. Christian, don't let unbelief be something that you view as like a secondary problem for you. You can have all this stuff in the world like Jacob did. And yet his unbelief was a massively bigger problem than whether or not he had anything. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, the Apostle Paul tells the church at Corinth of his own experience, of how he had these magnificent spiritual experiences, these encounters with the Lord. And he is telling this to them in the third person because Paul is trying to defer, right? He doesn't want to have a sense of personal pride and boasting. But he's telling the church at Corinth, look, I've had some pretty remarkable things happen. And that's a contrast for something else. It says, to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, right? The things that he had experienced, the things that he had seen. A thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this. Paul's wrestling with the Lord, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I'm content with weaknesses. I'm content with insults. I'm content with hardships. I'm content with persecutions. I'm content with calamities. For when I'm weak, then I'm strong. So Paul learned in a similar way to Jacob, right? This physical event occurs for him where it is like the blindness. And he's pleading with God, God, I really need to see. I would like to see clearly. It is difficult. This is not going to shop, go optical and getting glasses, right? This is hard for the man to live with an absence of perfect sight. He can't see well. He's pleading, God, please help me. I really need to see. And in Paul's maturity, Paul has a higher degree of maturity than Jacob does, to be sure, at this point. When he encounters this and the Lord says to him effectively, it's okay, because you need to be confident in me. And if I have ordered your steps in such a way, Paul, if I've ordered your steps in such a way, Jacob, where something gets put out of joint, you need to trust that the reason I'm doing this is that you are no longer confident in yourself. You must be confident in me. If you are not confident in me, you will suffer much greater consequences than physical discomfort or inconvenience. And it is a blessing for God to teach us this. It is hard. It is not pleasant. It is very, very difficult. But Christian, again, if you have been reconciled to God with the death of his son, there is no more condemnation for you, which means that all the difficulties, all the hardships, all of the suffering you encounter in your Christian experience, not a single moment of it is punitive. Not a single moment of it is God taking out his displeasure on you, saying, you know what, you're going to pay for that. You're going to pay for that. Every single moment is a fatherly care, saying, I know what is best for you. Jacob, you can't be a cheat anymore. Right? Just think what a good dad would say. Son, you can't live like this anymore. And if I have to deal with you through hardship, so be it. Because it is much worse for you to live as though your sin is something to be cherished. It is much worse for you to find confidence in yourself than it is for you to suffer a little pain right now to find a greater joy in me. That brings us to the summum bonum, Latin, the greatest good. Don't you want the greatest good? I want the greatest good. I think it's good. So he said, let me go, for the day is broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And they said to him, "What's your name?" And he said, "Jacob." They said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." And Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." They said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered." The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. So God works to weaken confidence in self. God does this, Christian. God works to weaken confidence in yourself. It is an active pursuit of God. This is not something that just happens in the by and by, like, okay, well, I guess maybe this is a byproduct. No, God is working actively to reduce your confidence in yourself, and that is a good thing. He's working to weaken confidence in self in order to establish himself as the greatest good of his people, right? We all have lists of things that we look at and say, this would be wonderful. My life would be great if I had this, and I had this, and I had this, and I had this. And yet God would remind us through suffering, through hardship, through difficulty, he would remind us, what about me? Am I not your greatest good? Am I simply just this secondary blessing? Like, well, I have God, and God allows me to get these other things, and isn't that great? And then I can live my own life, and as long as I kind of underscore it with prayer, and I kind of plaster Christian phrases and Bible verses on things, and then that'll make it a Christian experience. And God says, no, your greatest good is me. Please forget about these other things. These things are incidentals. These things are incidentals. As beautiful and wonderful and pleasurable as any of these things might be, they're incidental. Because your greatest good, Christian, is that you have been reconciled to your God. That he has, in the person of his Son, absorbed the punishment that you deserve for your sin. That he has lived the perfect life that you have not lived. That he has done these things, and then he has given himself to you as your greatest treasure, as your greatest good. So that just as Jesus speaks of the parable, the man who finds this treasure in a field, he finds it, he's like, I'm going to sell everything I have just to buy this field, because this is what means the most. And God would use events like Peniel with Jacob, or with Paul and the thorn, his blindness. He would say, please remember. Remember every step you take where you're feeling that hip pain. If you have to squint to see because you're like, I just can't see. Remember, your greatest good isn't your sight. Your greatest good isn't your ability to do things for yourself. Your greatest good isn't in any of these other things. Your greatest good isn't God. Jeremiah 24. Word of the Lord came to me, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel. Like these good figs, so I will regard as good the exiles from Judah, whom I have sent away from this place to the land of the Chaldeans. So he's speaking about this really hard episode, right? These people are being exiled. They're being exiled because of their wickedness. He says, I will set my eyes on them for good. I will bring them back to this land. I will build them up and not tear them down. I will plant them and not pluck them up. I will give them a heart to know that I am the Lord. And they shall be my people, and I will be their God, for they shall return to me with their whole heart. So this is the greatest good that God gives to his people. Like, if your possession is a new heart, if your possession is a new spirit has been put within you, that's everything. That's everything. God says, if you want to know what favor with me looks like, if you want to know what it is to be in good standing with me, here's what it is. New heart, reconciliation, forgiveness of sin. Anything else, incidental. Anything else, incidental. Jacob, you got your stuff. But if you just have your stuff and you don't have me, we got a problem. So be reminded in this. Just kind of one last thing, little bonus statement for you. Big idea, subpoint A, we'll call it that. And this is just a pastoral encouragement to you. Learn to praise God for the providences that direct you toward dependence on him for greater fellowship with him. All right, this is just what I think, is called for when we are always looking for the reasons why God is not happy with us, why things are not working the way we want them to. So we're just like, oh, I'm looking for the little blessings, right? Just maybe the little blessing is the fact that you are dependent on him. Maybe the blessing is not the absence, right? The absence of something. I think a blessing is this thing is out here. I don't have it, so I'm going to get the blessing if I get this thing. God is saying, maybe the absence is itself a blessing. Because I'm teaching you to not rely on yourself, to not rely on your own resources, not rely on your physical health, to not rely on your family, to not rely on your money, to not rely on your job, to not rely on your reputation, not rely on your education, not rely on your career, not rely on any of these other things. You rely upon me, there's a blessing. And God orchestrates these providences. These things occur that we do not plan for ourselves, that we would rather not experience. It's like, please remember. For me personally, twice a day. And trust me, I've complained about it enough in my life. Twice a day, morning, night. Take a pill so I don't have a seizure. Take a pill so I don't have a seizure. I'd really like to not have seizures. And it would be great if God said, nope, you're not going to have a seizure again. Don't take the pills anymore. But the presence of a pill twice a day for me reminds me, Chris, you are weak. You can't do this on your own. You are weak. God is strong. Trust me. And whatever it is for you, Christian, that you look at and say, I'd really, really, really rather not have this. Be reminded in these providences of things that will not go away, things that are difficult, things that are hard. Be reminded and say, the Lord is using this to drive me away from myself and toward him, right? The people of Israel remembered the limp for years. Wouldn't eat that particular piece of meat from anything they had. It's like, that's set apart. That's sacred. Why is it sacred? Because God used that to humble Jacob. Whatever God may be using in your life to humble you, don't push it away as a bad thing. It's good. It is good for you. It is good for me to be humbled and find our greatest good in God. So Jesus came to secure for his people. We're going to celebrate the Lord's table this morning. Luke 22, 14 through 20. When the hour came, Jesus reclined at table and the apostles with him. And he said to them, I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of God. And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he said, take this and divide it among yourselves. For I tell you that from now on, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. And he took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, this is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And likewise the cup after they had eaten, saying, this cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood. Jesus seals this covenant, this promise of a new heart with his blood. So when we come to celebrate the Lord's table, we're celebrating what is this great gift that God has given to us. He's given us himself. And the only way this can happen for us to be reconciled is that a transaction needs to take place, right? Our sin has to be dealt with, and we need to be counted righteous because we haven't been righteous. And Jesus says, I'm going to seal this promise in my own blood. So we take the Lord's table remembering, what's the greatest good, Christian? We don't take the Lord's table because each week God has given us like this great new wonderful blessing of stuff. We take the Lord's table because God's given us himself. And we take this like Jesus' body broken for me, Jesus' blood shed for me so that I might be reconciled to God. Our worship team.